I just want to take a minute and thank Venture Cafe Philadelphia for allowing me to host this presentation. I thank you for joining me today. Hopefully I can provide some valuable information. I do work with two companies that work in this space. One is called MBM Associates. We've been around for a long time, so maybe some of you have heard of us. And then another company, Bowers R&D. Today I'm going to talk about some general programs and some general strategies. And if anyone wants to speak to me about something more specifically about their particular business, then I feel, I encourage you to reach out. I'll provide my contact information at the end of the presentation. Okay. So let me just start here. And I will bring up my presentation. 1 second. Get it up and running. Okay, let's go here. Can everyone see that? Is that everyone can see the presentation, hopefully?
Yeah, we can see.
Okay, great. Okay, so just to get started, incentives are a funny thing. We've all heard in the business world, there's money out there. I know there's money. People tell me there's money, and often a business just doesn't know where this money is, what this money is, and how to access it. And, the fact of the matter is there is money there. I mean, each state has incentives available for businesses, and there's also opportunities through the federal government. And, it takes some time to do your due diligence and investigate these options, but in many cases, the benefits can be substantial. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about some of the options that are out there and get you thinking about how to access some of these programs. I will tell you, in the business that I've been in for now quite a while, I can't tell you how many businesses just think they're not eligible and don't bother, or they just don't have time. They're trying to build their business and they're assuming that, oh, if it was out there, I'd be taking advantage. Well, that's just not the case, because we wouldn't be in business if that was the case. So I just want to get you thinking about that and know that there may be something out there that you're not taking advantage of. So we're going to talk about a couple of kinds of incentives that you may be able to access. There are others, but today I'm going to touch on a couple that I think would be most valuable to businesses in our area. The first is pretty obvious, grants. We all know grants. It's, it's money that's provided to you for producing a particular product or doing something in particular. And then I'm also going to touch on tax credits, which at first for businesses that aren't aware, they might think they're very limiting in what they can provide. And I'm going to show you why that's not necessarily true. Okay, so we're going to start with grants. And I'm going to tell you right off the bat, in Pennsylvania, there really aren't a lot of grant opportunities. I mean, it's just a fact. These programs vary by state, and depending on who's in charge, the governor and their the government itself, they believe in different ways of incentivizing businesses. And you're going to find that in some states, maybe they have more grants. In some states, they might have more tax credits. Pennsylvania just doesn't have a lot of grants, but there are some free programs that I wanted to highlight and show you where to look so that you can follow and make sure that you're not missing out on anything. So here's a list of just a sample of some of the programs in Pennsylvania. They're not all grants. Some of them are just, free opportunities that you can investigate. The first one is the Workforce and Economic Development Network, otherwise known as WEDNET. And this opportunity allows you to be reimbursed for training that you do for your employees. And the nice thing about this is it can be either basic training, so for instance, you want your admin to learn Excel and you send them to get training and you get reimbursed. Or if you are, have a certain advanced technology needs, you can actually work with them and come up with your own customized training program and get reimbursed for that as well. So it's not just your basic skills. It's definitely valuable if you're in a training mode or if you need to get certifications of some sort. It's definitely something to look into. There's other programs like the Ben Franklin Tech Partners Challenge Grant. That's another option. Global Access Program, that's supporting businesses that want to increase their export sales. And then there's something called the Manufacturing Resource Center. So if you're producing a product you can go to them, and not only will they just give you information on how to, best sell your product and develop your business, but also occasionally they have grant funds. You can always look at the Department of Community and Economic Development website to look and see what does Pennsylvania have available. So you can actually look for your specific type of industry and stay on top of that. In addition, the federal government, I encourage businesses to go to the grants.gov site. They have a listing of federal grants, and I can tell you that many of the companies that I've worked with have benefited from federal grants, depending on what their business is. If you're developing new technology or something that's unique, there may be some grants that are available to you through the federal government, and then you can also take advantage of state opportunities as well. So moving on. Does there anyone have any questions about grants or that site? It's pretty self-explanatory. So the next topic, which is kind of near and dear to my heart because I think it's something that a lot of people aren't familiar with, is our state tax credit programs. And I will say that although my companies work across the country with tax credit programs in many states, Pennsylvania actually has some pretty amazing programs that are not available elsewhere. So even though we may not always be seen as the most progressive state, when it comes to some of these programs, they are really supporting innovative businesses, and it's definitely something that you need to know about. The reason Pennsylvania tax credits are so unique is that many of the programs that they have available provide a benefit, which is a sellable or transferable tax credit. Now, I didn't know anything about this until I got into this business, and maybe you do, but it was definitely something I had never heard of. Basically, what it means is if you qualify for a particular program, and I will discuss some specific programs in a minute, you can be awarded a tax credit. Now, that's great. If you owe money to the state of Pennsylvania, you have this tax credit and you can use it to pay your taxes. But many young businesses, startups or just, newer businesses, they don't owe tax to the state yet. So having a credit sitting in your account in Pennsylvania is not really exciting. So Pennsylvania has this option with many programs where you can actually sell that credit and monetize the credit. So what that means is, there's a whole network of buyers out there that need tax credits because they owe money. And they want to buy your tax credit. They will purchase the credit at a discount. So they're immediately saving off their taxes. And you, as the seller, are now receiving cash from them that you can use to infuse into your business. So it's a win-win. Now, all of the programs that Pennsylvania has does not allow for a sale of a tax credit, but many of the programs that many of them do. So I will mention some of those today. So what can you do with a transferable or sellable tax credit? Well, there's three things. First of all, you can use it to pay your taxes. So if you are a profitable company and you owe PA tax, then use the credit to pay it. It's a wonderful thing. You get 100% of the value, and it's great. If you either have a really small tax liability or none because you're just growing your business, you can carry the credit forward. So if you think in the next year or so you're going to be profitable and owe tax, hold on to it. Use it to pay your tax in a year or so. Each program allows you to carry it forward for a different amount of time. Or you can sell the credit. You can work with a broker, and you can sell this credit and receive the cash for the credit. You can do a combination of all three, by the way. You can use some, carry forward some, and sell some. There's a lot of flexibility. So what can you do with the money that you get when you sell a credit? Well, you can do whatever you want with it. There's no restriction. You can use it as working capital, all the things that I have listed here. Pay off debt, hire employees. I've seen all kinds of things done with it. And I've seen so many young companies in Pennsylvania benefit from some of these programs and really infuse cash into their business and use it to grow. The thing here is this is not a loan. It doesn't have to be paid back. So it's a beautiful thing. Just ultimate, number of possibilities. Does anybody have any questions about sellable tax credits in general before I go on? Nothing, Jake?
No, nothing in the chat.
Okay. Okay, so now I'm going to actually talk about a few specific programs that are available in Pennsylvania that provide sellable, transferable tax credits. Otherwise, credits that can be sold. The first program is becoming pretty well known in the area, and that's called the Keystone Innovation Zone, or KIZ. I will touch on that, requirements and all that. The next is the Research and Development Tax Credit. And the third is the Video Game Production Tax Credit, which is relatively new and I think pretty exciting. And I'll talk to you about the requirements for each of those. Okay. So the first credit is the Keystone Innovation Zone credit. This is a benefit that is available to young companies. It's geared towards young, innovative companies in a variety of particular industries. In general, what they're looking for is a company that's creating something unique, something that is proprietary. You can be in tech or biotech or manufacturing. As long as you're making something and it's yours, you own the intellectual property. It's your item that you're putting out there for commercialization, and you're under 8 years old, you're probably going to qualify. But before that can happen, you have to show that you are operating within a KIZ. So this is a zone-related program. There are 26 zones in the state of Pennsylvania. And as long as you're operating in those zones for a portion of 2 years, you can apply for this credit. The way they figure out what you can actually gain as far as a benefit is based on your revenues. What they do is they look at a base year of revenues in the first year, and they look at a comparable year of revenues. And basically, as long as you've increased revenues year over year, you can get 50% of that year over year growth up to $100,000. So for example, just to simplify it, if in base year 1 you had 0 in revenues, just for sake of ease, and in your comparable year you had $200,000 in revenue, you grew by $200,000 year over year, and that benefit would then be 50% of that growth, or $100,000. So basically, if you grow by $200,000 every year until you reach the age of 8, you stay within a KIZ and within the industry that I mentioned, you can qualify for this credit. Again, it's sellable, so you can use the credit or you can use this cash and infuse it into your business. You can imagine for a young company that its revenues can be relatively small to qualify for a pretty large chunk. This can really be a significant benefit to a business. Okay, so one of the zones I would be remiss if I didn't point out is the University City KIZ, where the Science Center is located. And you can see from this map kind of where it stretches. It's obviously kind of an odd shape, but I think the KIZ was really a partnership between, business and educational institutions. So it kind of goes around, I think it was Hahnemann Hospital, obviously Penn and those colleges in University City. So it's kind of a cooperation between businesses and educational organizations, and that's kind of why it looks a little strange. But there's the Navy Yard is also a KIZ. There's a large KIZ in Bucks and Montgomery County and Lehigh Valley. So, but obviously a lot of the innovation that takes place in our area is right there in the University City KIZ. So if your business is located in this area, you're qualified at least in that regard, and then you just have to meet the other criteria. Okay. So next I'm going to talk about the Research and Development Tax Credit. I really like this credit because it's kind of misunderstood. When you say research and development, a lot of businesses think test tubes and lab coats, and I can tell you that is not what this is about in full. Of course, if you are a research focused organization and do work with work with test tubes and that sort, you are going to probably be eligible. But this credit is really designed for businesses that create something. So you could be making bagels. You could be, you know, a software company. You could be a lighting manufacturer, and you could qualify for this credit. And that's where it's really misunderstood. A lot of businesses just say, oh, that doesn't apply to me. And it's so often, if I could only tell you how often, they are wrong. So they may go years without applying for it and find out that they should have been applying all along. So basically, to be qualified, you need to be spending money on development. You need to be doing testing. You need to be working with, you know, creating something, and maybe there's some uncertainty in how it's going to turn out. You don't know. So you do testing. You have people spending their time on prototypes, or, you know, design changes, or, you know, experimentation. If you're doing that in the course of your business, then that's what this R&D tax credit is all about. And what they do is the benefit returns a portion of the money that you spend on this type of testing and experimentation back to you in the form of a sellable tax credit. So unlike the KIZ, which is based on revenues, this credit is based on what you've spent. So often what happens, a lot of earlier stage companies can qualify for research and development before they can apply for KIZ, because they may not have revenues, but they've already spent a lot of time and money on their development. So this is definitely something that they can take advantage of sooner in many cases. What it does is it looks at the wages, box 1 W-2s, wages, the contractor costs if you're outsourcing development of any kind in Pennsylvania, and then disposable supplies. So if you are using, you know, chemicals, or, you know, some sort of scraps or something like that, those things are disposable. They can't be depreciated, and the cost of those would also be factored in. They take a percentage of it, and you get it back in the form of a credit. And guess what? It doesn't matter how old you are, and it doesn't matter where you're located. As long as you're doing the work in Pennsylvania, or partially, you could even be a New Jersey company that has, a certain branch in Pennsylvania, and some of your research and development is being done in PA. I mean, you can qualify. And if you do development partially overseas and you do some here, you can separate that out and just take the Pennsylvania benefit portion. So there's a lot of ways to make this work. But it's definitely something to consider if you're making something, no matter what it is. The next benefit is, as I said, rather new, but it's kind of exciting because, you know, we all know video games are, you know, where it's at. It's just an industry that's exploding, and Pennsylvania, you know, has come up with this benefit to encourage production companies in the state. So, you know, again, this is based on production. So if you're producing a game, you know, whatever expenditures are tied to that are incurred within the state of Pennsylvania, then you can get up to 25% of those expenditures back in the form of a sellable credit. Again, can be monetized for cash. And we've had some pretty large credits awarded to some gamers in PA. So this is a really great opportunity. And I will point out that a video game company could potentially take advantage of all three of these benefits at the same time. They could get a KIZ, an R&D, and a video game production credit, sell all of them, and pocket the cash. I mean, you know, and I will say that that's true for the other benefits as well. You could have multiple companies that could take advantage of KIZ and R&D at the same time, for instance. The only thing I will say, caveat, I should have mentioned this when I was on R&D, but the state of Pennsylvania does prohibit you from taking a KOZ, so different from the KIZ, but a KOZ benefit at the same time you're taking an R&D tax credit in the state. So you have to make a choice as a business, which one you want to take. If you're going to benefit more from the tax-free opportunities that are associated with the KOZ, then you take that. But if you know that in 1 year in particular, you've invested a ton of money in R&D, that year you may want to forego the KOZ and take the R&D. So that's something to look at. But otherwise, there's really not a lot of restrictions on taking multiple benefits. Okay, so The other benefit I just wanted to touch on, which is really important, is the research and experimentation tax credit, which is the federal R&D tax credit. I bring this up because if you're eligible for a PA state benefit in R&D, you're going to be eligible for the federal benefit as well. So you could be talking about the benefit, double the benefit. The only real difference, and there's a little bit of difference in how it's calculated, but the main thing is that the federal will accept any expenditures from anywhere within the United States, whereas the Pennsylvania benefit is looking for you to spend your money in Pennsylvania. So if you spent money in, Colorado, you would have to separate those expenses out for the PA credit, but they would be fine with the federal benefit. So here you go. Again, if you're investing in a product or process, you can get this back on the federal level and on the state level. The only difference is that the federal benefit is not sellable. But I will say that in 2016, they made a change to this benefit, which really was beneficial to startup businesses. What it did was it allowed you to take the credit that you qualify for, assuming you may not owe federal tax at that point because you're a startup, and they allow you to apply it towards your FICA tax, which is the business's portion of the FICA tax, 6.2%, I believe, on the payroll. So you can use that each payroll period to satisfy your portion of payroll tax. And then when you owe tax federally, you can just use it to pay your federal tax. So it gives you this way to monetize the credit earlier and not dependent upon you being profitable. So this credit can be carried forward for 20 years. So even if you can't use it right away, and you're planning on being a profitable company, you can take this credit, have it sit there and use it over time. And that's what I would encourage you to do. It's generally, as it says here, 7 to 10% of your expenditures. So if you're spending $100,000 on development, you might get a $10,000 credit, just to give you some idea of what you'd be looking at. The difference between this and the state credit: the federal credit, you have to ask for it when you file your federal returns. The state credit has a separate application period, as does the KIZ and the video game credit. So all the state benefits have application periods. The federal credit, you take it when you file your federal return. I just wanted to address one kind of misunderstanding as it relates to the CARES Act and the R&D benefit. For those of you that are aware of it at all, the CARES Act has this option where you can defer payroll tax as one of the benefits. And as a result, some businesses came back to us and said, well, I don't really need the R&D benefit then, because I was going to use it to pay my payroll, but now with the CARES Act, I don't need to worry about that. But that's not really true. The fact of the matter is it's only being deferred. It's not being erased. So when you do have to pay it, I think it's in 2021, February, I think, well, you still have this credit there that you can pay it. If you don't have the credit, now it's coming out of your pocket. So you definitely want to take advantage of it, irregardless of the CARES Act. And one other thing, I do know that if you choose to participate in the payroll protection portion of CARES, you cannot defer your payroll taxes. So I don't pretend to be an expert on that benefit at all, but I do know these aspects of it. And if you want to defer your payroll taxes, then you really should talk to your payroll provider. But just keep in mind there is a little bit of a misunderstanding there, and that there's really no reason not to take the R&D benefit. So winding down, just a couple of things that I've learned over my time in this business, and that is that a lot of benefits are missed out on because of incorrect assumptions. And I just wanted to cover a couple of things here just to keep in mind. Number one, don't assume you're getting all the benefits that you're eligible for. Honestly, and this is not a knock on accountants, because I have an accounting degree. I love accountants. But they're generalists. They're looking at your overall, situation. They don't have the time to stay focused on every benefit that comes through the state. And believe me, they change. I mean, we do this as a business, and we constantly have to stay on top of what's coming and going and when are the application periods and all of that. So don't assume that you'd be taking advantage of it your accountant would know about it, you'd be doing it. It's just not the way it is, and I can tell you that from experience. Don't assume you're not eligible. As I said, with R&D is a good example. A lot of businesses are that don't know they are. Don't assume it's not worth it. I can tell you that some small businesses get $100,000. I mean, they might have $200,000 in revenue and get $100,000 in sellable tax credits. I mean, that's really significant to a business like that. So don't assume it's not worth it. Don't assume you're not qualified for R&D, and don't assume it's not worth your time. I mean, there's a lot of resources. I know the Science Center has resources, wonderful resources to help you. There's businesses like mine that can help you. Your financial partners can help you, whoever. But the point is, don't assume it's not worth your time. So just some action items after this. I would take the time to confirm the incentives that you may or may not be receiving. Ask some questions, figure out if anything I said, struck a chord with you and, hey, maybe that's me. I should be looking into this. Talk to somebody about it. Either your accountant, feel free to reach out to me, or a company like mine that can give you some advice, tell you if you might be eligible. The point is, don't let the time go. The state of Pennsylvania has some application periods coming up in September, so you still have time to apply for some of these benefits this year. And for most of them, you can't go back. So if you miss it this year, you're done. You can do it next year. But, now's the time to ask the questions before your opportunity goes away. So that's pretty much all I have, Jake. Are there any questions or?
Excellent. Yeah, thanks, Ann. Yeah, we had a few questions. We're kind of running up on our time here, so maybe.
Right, I'll do a quick.
Let's see. First one. Does video game also include virtual reality and other related production companies? How do they define game?
Yeah, there are a couple of benefits. It possibly could. I'd have to know more about your project. There's also film tax credits, which kind of cross over too. So I'd really need to know a little bit more. It's generally for video game production, but there may be some opportunities depending on the other visuals that you're working in. So, if you have specific questions, just give me a call and I can get you an answer. But there's a couple opportunities between film and video game. I didn't mention film, but there's some other opportunities there potentially.
Okay, great. Another question. Do you need to have I'm not sure which credit this was for, but do you need to have payroll? We were waiting for funding in my startup before starting payroll.
For the KIZ, you need to have what's called a payroll function, but that can also be a disbursement to an owner. It doesn't necessarily have to be payroll per se. The others you don't. It's just that one of the largest feeders of the benefit is the Box 1 W-2s. So a lot of organizations that have like a development department, you would be able to take a portion of all the salaries of the employees in there. But if you're a company that just uses contractors or supplies and contractors, that works too. So you don't have to have payroll for R&D. You do have to have payroll at least in one of the 2 years for KIZ. So again, if you want to tell me about a particular instance and I can tell you, what you would need to do to qualify, feel free to reach out, but that's the general rule.
Okay, cool. And yeah, we had one last question. Maybe it has to be addressed privately, but are you eligible for KIZ/KOZ credit if your office or co-working space is in a zone, but your company is not incorporated in PA?
Yes, you can be you have to be registered to do business in Pennsylvania. Your company can be either a foreign company or it could be a company based in another state. As long as you're registered to do business and you're generating revenues in PA for some portion of your business, you can qualify.
Awesome. All right. Well, that's all our questions. And yeah, thank you very much, Ann.
Thank you so much. Anybody has any questions, feel free to reach out. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you, Jake. I appreciate it.
Not a problem. All right, everyone, enjoy your evenings.
Thank you. Bye-bye.